And I just couldn't take that style of relationship anymore, that I'm always first in service of her needs and my mother's needs without any regard to what was going on in my life.
Welcome to the Bad Mothers Podcast. I'm Monica Cardenas. My guest this week is Shelly Sharon. Shelly helps women who've been around the block with healing unpack the way a challenging relationship with their mother still holds them back today so they can thrive in their life and career. Shelly is a trauma-informed, certified Hakomi therapist. After a childhood marked by neglect and abandonment, she turned her story on its head and built a life of purpose and healing, where she's committed to helping women to heal their mother wound. You shared with me that you have some personal experience in these complicated mother-daughter relationships, and you also have a support system for helping with the mother wound. So we're going to talk about both of those things today. Can you maybe start by telling me a little bit about where you're coming from in terms of estrangement and relationship with your mother?
So I have been interacting with my relationship with my mother much longer than I have with my sister. So I wanted to name that this can feel sometimes fresher to me in compared to, let's say, 20 years and some of processing layers and layers of my mother wound. But my sister is not a separate part of it. She's actually an integral part of it. And what comes to mind is a story of, I think we were, she was 10 years, maybe. So that made me 12 or 13 years old.
And is it just the two of you, or do you have other siblings?
Well, I have a brother from my father.
Okay.
So he's had another partner and
Mm-hmm.
he's younger, 23 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, growing up, it was just my sister, myself, and my mother. And
Mm-hmm.
as you're mentioning that, his sense that comes to me is like it was very, very um, isolated in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember being in a very small kitchen in our two-bedroom flat that we all shared. My sister and I had shared a room and a bed that kind of like, open to two beds.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother slept in the bedroom. And we had a very small kitchen with like a bar table that stretched from the wall, and that was basically the partition between the small kitchen and the living room slash bedroom. And my mother, who was a heavy smoker, gave my sister, 9 years old, a puff from her cigarette. And
Wow.
I can see you raising your eyebrows, but
Mm-hmm.
between myself and my sister, we used to joke about that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We used to joke about how our mother was doing this kind of crazy stuff. And it's only when I started my healing journey, and more so when I started my trainings, and particularly the trainings that I took for healing the mother wound, and I'll get to it later. Um, my perspective of that moment completely changed, and I could see more clearly the utter neglect and the depth and the width of the emotional and physical abuse that my sister and I both
Mm-hmm.
shared. So, my sister and I had always been big fighters when we were children. And at some point, when we were older, I would say probably more like in my 30s. So that's quite a later stage that we became best friends, quote unquote. Like we've become much closer and we've shared a lot and we used to joke on things like that.
Right. Can I
But
just ask
yeah.
quickly, when you say that you fought when you were children, do you mean like bickering and arguing like all sisters do, or was there like physical altercations between you?
It's a good question. I don't know much about how, other children. I know that, siblings fight, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
But yes, I remember once I punched her so hard in the stomach.
Mm.
I can't remember exactly why and what was the occasion. I do remember we were outside playing just nearby the house, and I punched her so hard that she stopped breathing for a few seconds. Obviously,
Mm.
I probably hit her diaphragm. And I was terrified by what we could do to each other, not that it
Mm.
stopped.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I
and
understand.
again, we used to joke about all these kind of, we never really had the right perspective to frame. And as I was preparing for our conversation, I did a lot of reflections. My sister had her birthday a couple of days ago,
Hmm.
and it's not a date that I can just pass by without having some thoughts and about her and about not singing her happy birthday in a message. She lives in a different country, so a
So
completely
are
different.
you not in contact with her anymore? Is that
No,
okay?
no.
And that you said is directly related to your relationship with your mom. Is that right?
Right. Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
explain how that happened?
Yeah, so a couple or 3 years ago, my mother had a heart attack. My mother is a very sick person, both mentally and physically, emotionally. She's been dealing with chronic depression and lines of schizophrenia since my very young age. And she is now already in a care home for elderly people who suffer from mental illnesses. And when she's had a heart attack, my sister already planned to go and visit her. And I just started a new life, you could say, because I've been dealing with one of those very nasty versions of COVID, which almost took my life, and it took me a whole year to recover. It wasn't clear at all how I'm going to recover and to what
Wow.
extent. So our finances, my finances, my business was dead. I was not able to offer any private sessions. I was not able to offer any groups. I had to stop everything. And after a year of recovering, which I'm very glad that I did because it was just so shaky, I took a part-time job to help us with our finances, and I was in a trial period. So I made a decision to not go and rescue my mother once again because I've already cut the umbilical cord of that years before. I was the one to always jump on the plane and, you know, take the lawyers, pay the debts, mediate with conflicts with her
Mm.
neighbors or
Right.
her roommates or whatever it is. And I just stopped doing that and I just stopped taking that role. My
Mm.
my sister and my mother have what is called an enmeshed relationship, or how I call it, infused
Mm.
relationship, like they're really merged with one another. So my sister responded in a way that I've always dreaded inside myself that she would once I take a step back. And she perceived my decision to not join her as a betrayal.
Mm.
And she started going on a tangent of, she didn't feel like I was there for her, even though I called every day, at least a few times a day. I spoke to the doctors myself. I was trying to stay informed, on top of still rebuilding my health
Mm.
from hardly being able to stand on my feet more than a few seconds to springing into daycare to take a part-time job and being on my feet all day long,
Mm.
which anybody who has small children know how difficult that
Mm.
is. I haven't been there for her. Even though I said that, she felt like I still hasn't been there for her. And I just couldn't take that style of relationship anymore, that I'm always first in service of her needs and my mother's needs without any regard to what was going on in my life. It
Mm-hmm.
was such an important moment for me. It was both, an endeavor and a celebration moment of, hey, I am actually alive and I'm
Mm.
able to participate in life again. So, no, I decided not to go, and she basically stopped talking to me. But a couple of years later, when my dad passed away, she again traveled to Israel, our homeland, and she gave me a call at the night of the funeral. And again, I made the decision not to go to the funeral, which I'm very happy about because even just from the conversations that I've received on the phone calls and the text messages that I've received, it's always a reinforcement of how dysfunctional and how abusive my family is and how they are actually unable to respect my decision to build healthy environments and healthy dynamics and healthy styles of communication in my life. It's
Mm.
always, and that's something I always tell my clients. The person who decides to break the cycle is often made into the scapegoat of the family because you're
Yeah.
breaking a contract there. So my sister called me at the night of the funeral, and I'm like, what do you want? I haven't heard from you for nearly a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
What? And she started name calling me and shouting at me and really like screaming in the phone. And it was the first time, that it's happened. And I was with my husband, he was in the vicinity, and I just moved my iPhone away from my ear. And he could hear her sitting almost a room apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, that's what I always had to deal with when I said something that she doesn't like or when I'm behaving in a way that she's not approving.
Mm.
And when I started studying up for myself and saying, no, I don't appreciate being judged all the time. No, I'm not appreciating having your views instead of being compassionate to me.
Mm.
And yeah, that was the end of it. That was, I think, where she got the message that I'm just not playing her game anymore.
Mm.
So it just went back to no contact again.
Okay. Okay. And as far as you know, is your mother still living then?
Yeah, my mother's still living. I probably can say that we're semi-estranged.
Is your sister looking after her then? Or at least, as needed?
I'm curious about what you mean by looking after her.
I mean, if she has a medical issue like the last one, is your sister still showing up for those times if your mother asks, or has she stepped away as well?
As far as I know, my sister is very involved in my mother's life, and she
Mm.
has always been. And I have to add that my mother, in spite of being under the influence of heavy mental challenges,
Mm.
referred to as mental illnesses normally, she's always been so skillful in finding resources for help.
Mm.
So it's not that it's really dependent only on me or needs to be dependent only on me. And that's sometimes always some things that when women speak to me and say, but who's going to take care of my mother, especially if they're an only child?
Hmm.
And it's like, part of the healing process is seeing outside of the child lenses that you're not the only one. And it's actually not your obligation
Yeah.
to be the sole responsible of your mother. So I arranged my mother to be in a care home, in a hostel, where she was living with other people in her more or less condition. So she's not alone. And that happened like, I think, like 20 years ago, so, or 15
Mm-hmm.
years ago. I was working back then with the CEO of a very big organization, nationwide organization that supported people with mental challenges. Back then, in my what I call my previous lifetime, my previous incarnation, I worked as like the third eye, quote unquote, of NGOs and charities, helping them to strategize and evaluate their goals of making social
Mm-hmm.
change. So I was very much involved in that organization, and my mother received a huge amount of support. Beautiful social workers who took care of her needs and her emotional state. My mother has always complained, and I understand where it's coming from, but she could never appreciate the help that she's had.
Mm.
And so when you ask me, is she still being taken care of? Yes.
And
And
I should clarify, I didn't mean who's taking care of her as much as I wondered about whether your sister has changed her behavior at all, or if she's still in that, as you said, like enmeshed status with your mom.
yeah, yeah. And I think what kind of the curiosity that your question sparked in me was around how we could have different understandings and interpretation about taking care.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, and directly, yes, it hasn't changed anything of the enmeshment. I think my sister, um yeah, I was about to say something that is just painful for me to say, and I don't want to. So from my perspective, I'll say it from my perspective, I can't say that the needle has moved an inch.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, that the that she still holds me in the same role that I have
Mm,
moved away from. That she and my mother have the same dynamic. Like one of the things, like she asked me over the phone a few years ago, can you tell me, does that happen only with me? That mum keeps on threatening to take her life when something is off and she needs or wants my support rather than others' support? And my response was, yes, I
mm-hmm,
just don't take that on board anymore. I heard my mother threatening me with taking her own life if over things that, I mean, not that there is any way that any reason in life that could justify, in my view, a mother saying something like that to her children.
mm,
The depth of the distress that the mothers can feel could be really, really deep.
mm-hmm,
And yet, when a mother threatens her child, if you're not going to pay my debts, I'm going to take my life. If you're not going to help me
mm,
move a house, I'm going to take my life. If whatever happens with somebody else, I just want to take my life. This is a massive toll.
mm,
Even just saying that is some emotions coming up
mm,
inside me, and I can feel my chest getting heavy of,
mm,
ooh, the mixture of disgust and anger and compassion to my young
mm,
self who needed to
mm.
be a witness in that
Yeah,
scenario.
yeah, yeah. So you're saying because you stopped participating in that kind of exchange with your mom, that's the real difference, I guess, between you and your sister is she's still a part of that. She's still reacting to those things. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the central issue, I would say, in my own estrangement is I've had to remove myself in order to protect my own mental health and well-being. And I suppose if like the other side of that, of course, is like the guilt I feel for not helping. But it took me a long time to realize that it isn't and never should have been my responsibility, right? So I guess if your sister hasn't seen that perspective or can't accept that perspective, then you are just, miles apart.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mentioned earlier that for many years we were like best friends to each other, and to
Mm,
many, to a great extent, it was true.
mm,
We would speak over the phone every day, and yeah, but yeah, I'm trying to kind of elaborate on what does it mean to be best friends. And when I think
mm,
about my side of the story, I would always feel so speak over the phone every day, and the majority of the time would probably go to me advising her and listening to her about her rants and her conflicts at work and
mm,
with her friends.
mm,
Me being there for her. So when she did ask me, you know, how is it about you? How are
mm,
you? I would feel so strange to share something because it felt like out of context. But
mm,
also, I always had to brace myself for judgment and views. It's as if she was unable to be there just listening and be empathic
mm,
without trying to give an immediate fix or to fix me.
mm,
And that's another thing that I stepped away from. It just felt like, being under the heat of a hammer every
mm,
time. Like, why, who in their right mind would want to be there?
mm,
So, because she's my biological sister, doesn't instinctively oblige me to maintain a role that I outgrew a long time ago.
right.
And it was a process to get to that point where I say, okay, no more.
Yeah.
I didn't try to appease her when she kept on tooting the horn that I was not there for her, when I tried to express some of my views and how I saw that as
Mm,
taking the role of the victim as if I'm the perpetrator who's taking away
mm,
something from her by choosing to be here for my life and my financial, physical, and emotional needs.
mm,
And the response to that was, yeah, okay, so what? I'm entitled to be a victim. Okay, but it's just not my role to
yeah.
care to care
Yeah.
for that and to nurture that stance.
Mm,
So it's not even being able to be in an equal conversation of trying to see the other's point of view.
mm,
I don't need anybody to agree with me, really. I know that I'm not the only person in the world who has certain kind of values or thinks in the same way or like green teas and dark chocolate. I know I'll always find my people.
mm,
And I've always had my own soul family from a very young age because I've always been isolated. I've never felt connected to my mother.
mm,
From a very young age, I felt like
mm,
I just I don't belong there. And I had the skill from a very young age to find the people who will be like my family.
mm.
So I've always had people that reinforce that worldview,
Yeah.
that it doesn't need to be my biological family. And we live in a society that has such a conflictual relationship in its perspective about biological family.
Mm,
Like, on the one hand, it's supposed to be your your happy ever after gathering place where you're embraced and loved and accepted and cheered on. And we know so many families that it is just such a Hollywood,
Mm.
myth that is just not happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on the other hand, our family, in the way it's set up in our social system, is so isolated and is so secluded that
Mm.
it's facing so many challenges that no unit and no system can or should face alone.
Yeah.
So, as siblings, we're plugged into part of that bigger conflict.
Hmm.
And it's a big one to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we, I want to shift the conversation a little bit to your work on the mother wound for anyone who hasn't heard that term before. Can you explain what it means, a mother wound?
The mother wound is a rupture in our relationship, in all relationships. It's a rupture in our relationship with ourselves, with others, and with life itself, the space that we take in life, including our career, our vocation, our creative aspirations and endeavors. That originates in the rupture in our relationship with our mother. So the mother wound is like across the board impact on different aspects of our lives where each one of us will see that more clearly in one aspect rather than the others. So some women, I speak about women because that's the majority of my work and that's my specialization. It doesn't mean that there is no mother wound for men. On the
Okay.
contrary, it exists very, yeah. So for some women, it will manifest more in the sense of self. Like one of the major manifestations is feeling not enough, which can translate into people pleasing or to being high achiever. So there's
Hmm.
always some reflexive compensating mechanism to fill that void. But for other women, it might be manifesting more in intimate relationships. So they might discover that they've married their mum. And that's an interesting point because it's not gender related. So the qualities and the difficulties, the struggles that we've had with our mother could be found as qualities and behaviors in another person, being that a man and or a woman. So that's something I
Mm.
hear a lot from my clients that they suddenly discover that they married their mother, or it can manifest in the relationship with their space in life. So there's always a belief that you can't take space, you're too small, whatever you do will not matter. And then you are avoiding getting into communities or following your
Hmm.
creative ideas, setting up the business that you wanted to set up, etc.
Hmm. Okay. And this all originates with a, somehow broken relationship with the mother, or these women who have a mother wound, are they sometimes still very close with their mothers and experiencing these problems in other areas of their life? I guess I'm asking, what's the experience in childhood that leads to these problems that you were describing?
Yeah, the mother wound is a spectrum.
Hmm.
You can find yourself in a very, very continuum, a big kind of like a wide continuum. The mother wound, I'll say, grows from a repetitive unmet needs and repetitive ruptures. So sometimes young mothers and mothers who've had a complex relationship with their mother need to hear that we're humans, and as mothers, yes, you will snap at your children sometimes because yeah, they can be loud, but You also have the possibility to have a repair conversation afterwards and
Mm,
say sorry, or, um, you know, be very busy with your work in one particular period of time, but it's not something that defines your relationship. There is a big difference there. What
mm,
defines women who grow up to experience the mother wound is that this certain rupture that occurred in their relationship with their mother kind of defines their relationship. So it could be mothers who were very critical of their daughters, never believing in their power to make decisions. So a daughter
mm,
grows up to doubt herself, or some of my clients grew up in a very strict environment, sometimes in a very strict religious environment, where the
mm,
idea was that women need to be the servants of men and the house, and the girl was groomed to be
mm,
that person from a very young age, and her childhood was stolen from her.
mm, mm,
Um, Sometimes it's mothers who struggled with substance abuse or mental challenges, and the daughter was the parentified child.
mm,
So she grows up to feel emotionally insecure in as an adult, or not knowing how to create emotional safety for herself, with friends, especially with intimate partners.
mm,
Yeah, women who have suffered sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and their mother knew, didn't do anything, didn't say anything,
mm,
pretended.
mm,
And in their adult life, they feel that they're always somehow in danger, or they are afraid of putting themselves out in the world because they
mm,
feel they could feel somehow inside that something is missing from them and they're not enough.
mm,
Or I would use a word that I've heard from my client. She said, I feel like I'm so damaged that I have nothing to contribute. And I've heard that from women um, across from different women, not just women who suffered sexual abuse.
right.
So it's a wide spectrum, and women can still have a relationship with their mother. They can be estranged from their mother. Sometimes they come to me because they want to figure out the relationship with their mother, and they don't necessarily have a goal in mind to cut off from their mother. Sometimes they do have that goal in mind, and they want to figure out how to do that, because there is also the bigger family involved, and sometimes the siblings or the dad. So
Mm,
there are a lot of other connections and other relationships, and also a huge sense of belonging, because as I mentioned earlier, a big part of our construct of a sense of belonging starts from drawing something from our biological family, until we begin to widen that perspective and see
mm,
that belonging really doesn't belong only to our biological family.
mm,
Sometimes women come to me not because they want to realize anything directly in their relationship with their mother, but because they notice how they are inhibited, stalled in their relationships in life,
mm,
whether a sense of self that they carry, or the relationship with their clients if they have their own business, or the relationship with friends, or
mm,
intimate partners, and they have some intimation that it's rooted in the relationship with their mother, and they want to find a resolve for that.
mm, mhm. And how do you find a would you call it a solution to the mother wound? Is there a way to heal it?
Yes, on the whole, I call that um, rebirth, reset, and recenter. So I have a free private podcast they call Birthright with RITE because this is the passage, the rite of passage we go on to when we haven't had our birthrights fulfilled, to be protected, to be loved, to feel safe. I consider these to be birthrights.
Mm,
And often that's where things start when we're noticing the different kinds of efforts we're doing instinctively, automatically, because that's what we had to do as children, as daughters, to survive a chaotic, a dysfunctional, a ruptured home environment.
mm,
Efforts to not get hit, efforts to not be seen or heard, efforts to be seen and heard, whatever the scenario is, our mother is our birth canal to life and the model to what we can expect from life. All that happens unconsciously. We're not, as children, sitting
mm,
down thinking, oh, my mother, didn't fulfill my expectations today
mm,
and yesterday and a year ago. So I cannot expect people to understand me, or I cannot expect people to appreciate hearing my voice,
mm,
or I cannot expect people to see my gifts and want my gifts.
mm. And that's because children don't have expectations for their mother, right? They just know what they know. They know their own experience. They don't know what is might be lacking from that relationship.
We have expectations. We are born with expectations.
Okay.
And when and I see what you're saying. It's kind of like the knowing equals expectations in
Mm,
in earlier years. Yeah. And it evolves right from year 2 and 3. It evolves, and there is a separation between the knowing, the instinctual, more biological, physical knowing of, like, I need to eat now, then mom feed me, or
mm,
two, having that as a relational expectation, like, look, mommy, I'm doing this trick and I've done that many times before, 100 times before, but I still need you to see me because it's innovative for me and I need to be witnessed. And
mm,
this is where the relational expectation starts to gain information from the input that we're receiving in a very immediate, direct relationship in with
okay,
our
okay.
mother.
I guess what I'm thinking is I can totally understand that in that scenario, then the child, if the mother was ignoring that little performance or trick, then the child would feel like rejected or neglected in some way. But I guess what I'm thinking is the child wouldn't be able to articulate that feeling necessarily. They just sort of maybe begin to think that's how moms are. This is how I get treated,
Yeah.
and don't think about it as like mom should be this way instead.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very good
Okay.
translation. I love the way you put it. It's the information that we receive in a very direct yet unconscious way that leads us to make conclusions about ourselves,
Mm,
others, and the world.
mm,
And that rejection can be sustained once, twice, 10 times in a row,
mm,
100 times in a row. The resilience and capacity of children to keep on trying and get from their mother what they need is amazing.
mm.
And there are two things that are happening, and one of them you touched on. Most of it happens in a time of our lives where our narrative capacity is not developed, which means that all the impressions that we receive from a relationship lands in us through our survival brain, through our emotional brain, and registers as a fact. This is how
Mm-hmm.
life is. And later on, after we've tried over and over and over and over again to get mum to come to my birthday party not intoxicated or to take part in my homework and my school life. I never had any of that. Um, I never had anybody who made lunch for me. So we children, as children, we really need our mothers to meet our individual needs.
Mm-hmm.
And if it consistently is not met, then there is a rupture in our capacity to understand, okay, it's not because of me.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep making these efforts, and that's the birthright to move from efforting to life where you don't have to struggle any longer to feel seen and to feel appreciated and to be listened to and to have the right people who are easily giving that to you and are interested in you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's often the beginning of the process of breaking that cycle of
Mm-hmm.
excessive labor just
Mm-hmm.
to feel like you can relax into yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've began to relax into yourself, then it's like the reset is noticing all these expectations because once you have a somatic direct sense of, oh, I expected you to not even like what you see in me or avert your eyes from me or not liking what you're hearing, then I wonder how much I do that in my daily
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. And once you have that awareness, you can start to change it, right?
Yeah. So I often say that awareness is a good start, but it's not the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we need is first to be aware of what is managing us inside of ourselves. And once we see clearly and we have the awareness of that, then we do need to have different experiences, like experienced experiences that are felt, that lands as a felt sense in our body and inside a relationship that we can identify, oh, this is how it looks like, or this is how it feels like,
Mm-hmm.
or that's what it brings up for me, that's how it makes me feel.
It occurred to me as we're talking, it's is it unfair to put this all this responsibility on the mother? What about the father? Is there such a thing as a father wound, or can a father inflict a quote unquote mother wound? I mean, I can imagine in some of the scenarios you were describing that if it was that a father could do the same kind of harm to a child, ignoring them or criticizing and that sort of thing. So can you explain how that might fit?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the mother wound never happens in a vacuum. It happens in a system. A family is always a system. Even if it's a system of only three people, it's already a system. It's already
Mm,
some form of a community. And yes, there is such a thing as a father wound where the the dominant conflict between a child and their parent is with the father. There is something particular about the relationship between a mother and a daughter because it is gender based. At least when we're born, we don't have any ideas about identity. We
mm,
have a certain kind of instinctual setting And I have been doing work because my initial professional training is in special education. I actually have a master's degree in that as well. And I spent a lot of time working with children. I love working with small children. And it's just incredible to see two things that I've witnessed so often is how at certain age girls will often prefer their mum. Mothers provide different qualities than fathers, so it doesn't put the whole responsibility on the mother.
Mm-hmm.
I am putting, I'm shining a particular light on the relationship between a mother and a daughter
Mm-hmm.
and how it can unfold for women in later on in life. It
Mm-hmm.
does not take out the responsibility of a father. You know, the question to be asked is what was the role of the father in that? What
Mm-hmm.
is the role of the father in the mother wound? What is the role of a father or any partner? Doesn't have to be a man. When the mother has a narcissistic personality
Mm-hmm.
and uses one of her daughters as a scapegoat and creates fights and conflicts between the siblings to allocate a role for the foe and allocate the role of the friend, which is a very common behavior of narcissistic personalities. Um, and I would also say that yes, the role of the partner often lands on how much support a mother receives,
Mm-hmm.
because we know that the role of the mother is a very demanding role. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very challenging role, no matter how, what your style of motherhood is, no matter how you identify yourself as a mother, it's still a very demanding role. So,
Yeah.
yes, it's in a system, it's complex. And what I am specializing in is what happens to daughters who grew up in a complex relationship with their mother that prevents them from being the powerful, gorgeous, adorable, beautiful women in their adult life, because that's
Mm-hmm.
where I see a change that could be made in our society and dynamics between genders and gender roles, etc.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think that's a great place to wrap up. That definition really sums it up and the goals that you lay out in healing that wound. Bad Mothers is written, produced, and edited by me, Monica Cardenas. I'd love it if you'd rate and review the show and get in touch with any feedback. You can find me on my Substack, and guess what? It's called Bad Mothers too.